That's the way it goes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, we got quite a few people already lined up. They've been sitting there. Want me to go ahead and start letting them in, or
sure.
okay, we'll do. Unless you got something else you want to say, if you want to talk about Dwayne before we let him in or anything.
No, no, no. That would take too long.
That's true. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and let him in then. Morning, come on in, guys. Good seeing y'all. Good morning, welcome, welcome. Hey there.
Good morning.
Good to see everybody. There's Dwayne. We were just talking about you.
Good morning.
Good. That way you're not talking about other people.
That's right. We got to keep you in the center of our attention.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Somebody's got to do it.
Easy target.
That's right. Never quit. Look at your cup.
Yes.
Welcome, guys. Everybody, come on in. We'll get started in just a minute here. Good to see everybody smiling. Nice sunny day. Let's see. Okay, I guess it's right at 11. If you want, we want to go ahead and get started. I'm John Lee with St. Louis Real Estate Investors Association, and we are very pleased to have Miss Kathie Davis here for our weekly update with Davis Travaglini LLC. And we'll see what kind of update she has. She's smiling again. We always love to see that. So thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you. Hi, everybody. I feel like the vaccine news is good. The virus news is good. You know, things seem to be getting better. So that's all good to know. St. Louis County has stayed at phase 1 for another week.
Oh, exactly.
We've heard rumors, and that's all they are, is rumors, that they're going to go to phase 2 on March 15th. We think that maybe the judge is going to allow some evictions then, but maybe not all of them, but we're not sure. We think that anything they can do in the county to avoid doing evictions, they're going to do. In the city, Judge Stelzer extended his eviction stay till April 5th. He wanted to go past Easter, and he's actively talking to us about adding additional categories to the evictions he's going to add. So I don't think he's going to open the doors on April 5th, but I think he will add more categories of unlawful detainer. I'm hoping to get ejectments. We're hoping to get him to allow us to evict people who have not paid since before the shutdown, who have not paid for more than a year. You know, where we have judgments that are more than a year old. And I'm also lobbying for an exception to where I can go in with circumstances and say, I'd like an execution on this judgment, and here are the reasons why. Maybe it's because it was originally just a rent judgment, but now they've done behavior things, and we don't want to put the client to the expense and cost of having to file a new unlawful detainer, you know, that kind of thing. So we're trying to push the envelope on the city. So maybe in next week or the week after, we'll have, you know, bigger news from the county for you. Jefferson and St. Charles are motoring right along. There's only one court circuit in the whole state that's totally shut down, and that's up in Northeast Missouri, and hopefully none of us have to worry about that. They probably are vaccinating everybody and their cows, but they're not having court since all the vaccinations are being done in rural areas. But most of the counties seem to be going to what they refer to as phase 2 or 3 when it's back to normal operations. Some of you may have seen the county presiding judge, Judge Burton, on the news the other night. I think it was on Fox at 10 o'clock on Wednesday night, because 10 o'clock is past my bedtime, so my husband taped it for me. So I actually watched it yesterday. But the judge was talking about the long list of criminals that are awaiting trial. I shouldn't say criminals, they're awaiting trial, so they're accused. And a lot of these people, the crimes they're accused of or their financial circumstances are such that they are being held, they're confined, awaiting their trials. And this gives them the right under the Constitution to a speedy trial, because they can't just be held for years and years without a trial, you know, and that kind of thing. So obviously we haven't had juries in a while, but they're talking about, you know, getting juries back in. There's not a specific date for that, but it's clear that for the jury trials, the these criminal trials are going to go first. And we get that. We think that's fair enough. We do have a few unlawful detainers where the defendants have asked for jury trials, and those are kind of on hold. Although I'm starting to push for them to get dates, and I'm hoping that because here's what happens with those criminal trials: not that many go. Most of them plea out at the last minute or that kind of thing. So if they have leftover jurors that they can send us, if I'm going to be there and ready, I'm hoping to maybe be trying a couple of unlawful detainers in June. I have one set for then, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed. In the city, my son, who some of you know, Carrie, who serves some of our process here and is my office manager, he lives in the city as well, and he got a jury summons for the first week of April. So it'll be interesting to see if that holds up. But jury trials are the big deal. Once they start doing jury trials, we're going to be able to do anything, because jury trials are a lot. What else about that? We were on Zoom court the other day, and there was a break in the action, and Christine and I were chatting with our docket judge, Judge Medler, when Judge Burton, the presiding judge, came into Judge Medler's courtroom, said hello to us and how are we all doing and that kind of thing. And I said, well, I'm doing great, except the presiding judge of St. Louis County is driving me into bankruptcy because he won't allow me to do any evictions. And everybody went, ha, 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 except Christine. She didn't think it was funny. But we asked him, because it says in phase 1, which we're in now, that we're allowed to have up to 10 people in a courtroom. And then when they go to phase 2, we can have 25. And my feeling is I want to have two things. I want to first of all have my bench cases, my bench trials with just the judge. I would have less than 10 people for that. So I want to be able to start doing those trials in person. We're going to have some problems when they switch to WebEx, because some defendants don't have devices that will enable them to appear on WebEx for a trial where you can see them. They don't have cameras on their phones. It's more hard to do. Exhibits and that kind of thing when you're doing them remotely. So it also is a problem. It's a logistical problem with doing the trial settings. So we had a big problem yesterday afternoon. It sorted itself out, but our trial settings are getting further and further out because we're using these blocks of time, and the judge doesn't want to set more than one person at a time. Whereas if you remember in the old days, if any of you ever came to court with me, we'd have docket at 9 and trials at 10, and we'd have 10 or 15 trials set, and one of us would settle them while the other one was trying them. Half the people wouldn't show up, and we'd clear 10 or 15 trials between 10 o'clock and lunch. And the judges don't like to miss their lunch. So we were popular for being able to do that. And if we could get back in the courtroom for the trials, we could set more than one at a time. We could get quicker settings. We could therefore settle them more readily, and use the court time more efficiently. So we're trying to get that. We also wondered, because we've had some problems from time to time with, we think it's with our internet provider, but you don't even want me to go there because that's a whole whining lecture for an hour. But Charter, that's all I'm going to say. But we've had problems where our internet connection has been unstable when we've been connecting with court. And I'm saying, if you can have 10 people in the courtroom, can we come and be in the courtroom? And that way we'll be using their internet connection to connect with defendants that are calling in, but we'd be there. We can hand memos to the court. We think we could operate more efficiently. Well, they don't seem inclined to let us do that yet. I think the last thing Judge Burton wants is me in the courthouse running around talking to everybody. But we're pushing for that. And I think someone just said in chat something about getting a jury summons. Let me read that. Scott, last month, my wife and I were called to St. Louis County jury process for next week. Are you going? Have they called you? Who said that? Where's your little square? I'm not seeing the person. We had to reschedule for next month. Did you reschedule or did they reschedule you? We did. Okay. I'd be surprised if they're having jurors in there next week, but maybe they are. That would be amazing. That would be amazing. In St. Charles, they had a jury trial last summer where they picked the jury in the family arena. And then once the jury was picked from the large group of people, the 12 people plus the alternates went to the courthouse to do the trial. They've got a couple of courtrooms in St. Louis County. In the new wing, they have one really large one that they could do jury trials in, and everybody could still be pretty far apart. So maybe next week we'll know more about that. And I appreciate everybody who's telling me information about getting jury summons and everything. We're trying to, read the signs and figure out if there's intelligent life in the courthouse, and knowing if they're summoning juries is a clue. We have all these Zoom meetings and calls and everything, and we never really get any real hard, good, straight information. We have to drag it out of them. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Chris now, who's hopefully paying attention. There he is. And he's going to talk about these various rental assistance programs that he has the updates on.
Okay, so as I understand it now, and I'm going to say my direct knowledge is limited to St. Louis City for a lot of this, but there are, as it stands now, there are currently two programs that you or your tenants can get access to funding. The first one that I'm sure we've talked about before is the ERAP program. That's ERAP. That's the state program. That one is one you talked about before, that can provide up to 6 months of rent. A landlord can actually apply that for that one themselves. That is the benefit. You do that through the state website. You can probably just type in Missouri ERAP and get there. That one, I think we may have heard last week that it doesn't apply to St. Louis City. That one does. The landlord can apply for that one. The only issue with that program is the strings that are attached. It does require that a landlord not only waive everything else besides the 6 months of rent, they dismiss any lawsuit that they have pending against the tenant, and they agree not to file a new lawsuit within 4 months after the date you apply, even if the tenant doesn't, if your funding goes from through March and they stop paying in April, May, June, July, you can't file until that 4-month period ends. So I would say it only makes a lot of sense to tenants that you trust to start paying once they get current, or who have been paying partially and they're working, they got behind. I talked yesterday to a client who has done a few of them for her and her landlords, and she says the key is the reason that the money is still there is that most landlords can't figure out how to get through the process. It is a very onerous application process, particularly when you're new to it. If you miss like one letter on the on the address and one part of it versus the other, it'll restart the whole thing. If you're a couple cents off on the tenant's income, because you do need to have the tenant cooperate and provide income statements and that kind of stuff, it does require, it'll reset everything, and they reject it all the time. I think it's picking up a little bit, but I think when she first did it about a month ago, only 800 people had gotten approved because they just couldn't get to the process. So it's something that, you want to be very meticulous working with your tenants. Hopefully your tenants have pay stubs or some sort of, statements from their unemployment, that kind of thing. You want to have all your ducks in a row and make sure you're really paying attention to what you're filing. But she said once you do get through the process, the money comes in about 2 weeks. So they're getting if you successfully get approved, you're not waiting around for it. So that's a good thing. But again, you want to make sure these are tenants that you can work with, that you want to keep around, and that you trust that hopefully they're not going to stiff you for the next 4 months because they now know that they can't be evicted regardless of how the moratoriums go. So that's the state funding that you all can apply for. The next one is the federal funding. There was a new stimulus bill back in December where the federal government sent money to the states. That's called the SAFER is what it's called, but it's SAFHR program. That is one that is a tenants are the ones that comply. It's more similar in the application process to the CARES Act funding. The St. Louis County, as I understand from Kathie, is not ready to accept applications yet, to my knowledge. At least they don't have a website signed up for yet.
Yeah, I just checked their website before we got on the call, and they're still saying that applications will be accepted starting in March, and they'll let you know when they're ready for them.
Yes. So for properties outside of St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and Jefferson in this area, there's also the bigger municipalities. You can the tenants can apply through a state online program. So if you have St. Charles properties, your tenants can apply out there directly. For the rest of them, they give links. St. Louis County doesn't have a link yet. Jefferson County doesn't have a link yet. St. Louis County's link just, sends you to a webpage that says, bear with us. But there is an agency, Horizon Housing, is an agency that I believe is involved, as I understand it, is involved with the program, and they are starting applications in St. Louis City. And their phone number is 314-865-0383. And I believe another member of your group I talked to him yesterday, and he told me that one of his tenants had already started the process. This process can provide possibly up to a year's worth of back rent for the tenants and utilities and pay for going forward. I don't know the exact limitations on that and what they have to show, but it can actually pay rent and utilities, not even back stuff. If they have a good reason for why they would need it going forward, they're still out of work, they're not getting unemployment, they could even pay going forward. So it's something that you want to work with your tenants, get them to apply for it. And it seems like it's going to be a really good program if we can actually get the money moving and flowing. It is, the CARES Act was pretty frustrating to deal with, and I don't know how much. Apparently they've loosened things up a little bit, but I know there were some issues with tenants having to prove that they were fired due to COVID. Sorry, David's asking for the phone number again. That's 314-865-0383. That's Horizon Housing Development Company. And the tenants. So you want to tell your tenants to get their ducks in a row, maybe get some sort of letter from their prior employer that they were let go due to COVID or their hours were reduced due to COVID. I know my client who's done some of these with the CARES Act said she was even getting screenshots of restaurants on Facebook saying they closed down due to COVID, and using that as a good evidence that the tenant actually was, left to COVID. No, the landlord cannot apply for this one. You can help your tenants, but the tenant has to actually start the application. There is paperwork the landlord will have to do, but my experience is that the more hand in hand you work with your tenants, the more likely your tenants are to do it, because there's a lot of emails they have to respond to and meetings they have to do. Warren County, to answer David's question, I'm seeing down the chat, is one that you would apply through the state. So there's a state link that you can do, that your tenant can do a state application. So that's one that would do that. So the only ones they're going to apply in this area is City, County, and Jefferson County are banned, are not included in that for whatever reason. So I would start there with those. Have your tenants start calling Horizon, who you want to keep around, and it sounds like it's there's going to be a lot of money out there. I believe the city got $8 million this time around, and I don't know. I'm sure the county got more, but it's a little more expansive than the CARES Act. It's not as the CARES Act was 3 months of rent. This one, it's 6 months, possibly even up to a year worth of rent that they can get credit for if they show a good enough need. But it's going to require that the only tenants that I've seen are going to qualify or they're going to actually successfully do it are the ones who are with it and the ones that are willing to work with their landlords, because there's just it's a lot of hoops they got to jump through. They're so, according to my client who's got some connections up at the state legislature, Jefferson City is sitting on about $1 billion last year in COVID relief money that they did not spend because they couldn't figure out how to distribute it. This is not all landlord money, but it's statewide, for all the programs. They're so worried about fraud and having to pay for it themselves, because if they get caught up in fraud, they have to reimburse the federal government. So that money's just sitting there unspent. And I think, this is one of those programs that is probably going to be something similar at the city level too. So I would say, Lord, I would say work with your tenants, keep on them about it, and you may actually get some money. Sorry, I've not, my phone rings 6 different times every time someone calls. So that's what I've got. Is there anyone that is available to help the tenant through Horizon? I mean, I assume that's what Horizon is there for, to assist the tenant, but I think that it's one of these things where if the tenant can only go so far if they don't respond to emails. I know in the CARES Act, a client was telling me they had tenants who the CARES Act at the end would send emails like, hey, give us all this information within 3 hours. Otherwise you're not going to qualify. And the tenant, of course, wouldn't check their email or was at work, and then they would fail. So it's going to be it's a process, but I have had clients who have tenants, you're able to get the money through the same process. And I assume this one will be maybe a slower process than the state money, but it's there. And if you can help your tenants get their ducks in a row, get their utility statements, get their, work with you on getting an accurate rent statement and their income together, I think there's some, way that you can, hopefully avoid not having to evict anybody and get your tenants caught up with you, which is the important part. So that's my spiel on state money. Hopefully I haven't missed any. I try to keep up with the chat checks as they came in. Looks like I got most of them. So that's what I've got on the funding so far. We'll hopefully know more. I've told all of my clients, and I'll continue to tell you guys, if anybody, has a success story or a hurdle they find out, we'd like to know about it so we can pass it on and hopefully, keep as many landlords afloat as we can until we're able to actually, have tenants who pay regularly again. Yes, for the state, I would just, for the Warren County and the state, that's how I was able to find it, just Googling Missouri and ERAP, ERAP, and SAFHR. Those are the 2 programs, and it pops right up. And it's the fairly self-explanatory. There's some lists about what it would qualify, who qualifies, who doesn't qualify. There are income limitations on some of this. It's the safer one is, I want to say I have the link here, it's 80% of the local income in St. Louis City. That would mean a tenant who makes less than $46,000 a year for one single family. It goes up for 2 people, 3 people. For the ERAP one, I understand it's 50%, which is down to, I think, in St. Louis City, $29,000. They have to make below that. So that's the state, the ERAP money. ERAP is ERAP. Sorry. So there is some income requirements. You can't be making $100,000 and get this money. But my guess is you're not really talking about most of your tenants who are having that issue. So I would say, the more aggressive you can be, sending out letters to your tenants going, hey, this money's out there, let's help you get it. Some tenants are just going to, you can only lead a horse to water. And then, we're just waiting for, evictions to go in. And I would say sometimes filing against them, even if you think that your filing could be slowed down, can focus them. And, what we found last fall was we could file and help encourage people to actually start the application process. And the judge at the court and, even us as attorneys can tell the tenants, hey, these are your resources, go apply. And so for tenants who are, hesitant or just kind of sticking their head to sand, sometimes filing a lawsuit against them can encourage them to start applying for this. That you couldn't do the ERAP, but it doesn't appear that the SAFHR bill requires that you don't have a case on file. So it would that's only for the state funding. So you probably are good to go to if you want to kind of encourage people. I filed a couple yesterday for people who are just looking to someone went dark on them. They just want to have them hopefully give them a call and start working with them. So any questions about all the nonsense information that I gave you? And hopefully it seems to be subject to change every week from what we hear this, that, or the other. And hopefully we'll know more next week on, success or otherwise.
I have a question for you, Chris.
Sure, Dwayne.
And I ran into a lady yesterday that said she's been doing CARES Act stuff for people who don't have computers at home to help them pay into the landlords.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I would like to introduce her to either you or Kathie or somebody. And if she can actually do something that could help people, that would be a good thing. And from my opinion, if somebody owed me $6,000, I wouldn't care if I paid $3,000 to her, as long as I got $3,000 out of the deal and got caught up. So, and she said she's got that CARES Act down to, she knows which pages are important to get filled out. And so would you like me to find a time when she said probably wouldn't be available until the end of the month? Would you like me to introduce her to somebody there in your office? Maybe you could then put it out as to where she could go, or where we could all get help, or if we have that problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always, looking for, resources. So if she wants to reach out and pass along, and I've got, plus for landlords who don't have the time, some of my landlords have office staff that they can spend hours doing these applications for tenants or doing the ERAP applications. I know one client of mine who that's all their staff has been doing for the past, since January, is filing for this ERAP money. And it's just a lot of work. It's one of these things where it's 40 pages long. And if you mess up more, if you file it once, they gave you one chance to fix it. And if you screw it up again, one letter off, one number off, you got to start the whole process over again. And so it's it's something where according to the clients I talked to, once you get the hang of it, you can kind of get in that rhythm and you can start spitting these applications out. But that's the ERAP one. The safer one, we don't really know for sure. Hopefully Horizon's got a smoother thing, and they've, I know Kathie's been working with in her groups, trying to streamline the process, stop the hurdles, using things that we can prove what they owe without having to, to get every proof that they're really behind on rent and, why they're behind. Yeah. So it's back in the fall, the city had that a mediation company who was assisting in this stuff, but they ran out of funding for that. And I have not heard that the funding is returning to have this mediation company help us apply for, help push the applications through. So we had a few that were successful in that. Can we pay your staff to file ERAP for our tenants? We've never applied. Unfortunately, I love that we had extra staff to do that. We don't have time to, and I don't think to muck through the process to apply for the tenants, unfortunately. So we were not be the ones to ask that, but it sounds like if what Dwayne's saying, there are professionals out there who are assisting. Of course I can't vouch for them without talking to them, so, but sure. But really, I mean, the key is, and the other reason we probably couldn't be too involved with it is because the more involved we get with tenants directly, the more likely we are to have a conflict if we ever had to boot them for you in the end. So it's probably, we can point a tenant in the right direction, but as far as sitting down and meet with them, going over their finances, that kind of gets more into conflict zone than we as attorneys for the landlords really want to get too involved with. But we certainly, the judges always do. There's I know in my cases, that summons that I got issued this week, there's a small information packet that goes out with the summonses to tenants to tell them about, they kind of point them to calling 211, which was the United Way number. So far from what I heard, 211 is not set up to do this yet, but I'm not telling you don't call them. If it was me, I'd be calling every possible number I could find. The other thing to think about is there are smaller agencies that have had better success, in my experience, getting this money quickly. So the more your tenant and you can call around, and find different agencies that might be outside of the mainstream, it's the money's going to be there. It's just who's going to hustle enough to get it is the thing. And it's
right.
The tenants sometimes can't succeed on that. But it's going to be there. It's just, like I said, there's billions and billions of dollars nationwide that no one can figure out how to access. So the money's out there. It's just how much time do you, as most of you all, I assume this is not your only job, so they have to spend hunting down the aid money.
So what phone do you want me to give out to her so she can call you, Chris?
You can 314-962-1115, and she can call my extensions at 15. And she can give me a call and explain to me what she does, and then we can provide that information whenever we have tenants clients who need help. So I'm sure she'll be I mean, once that's, and probably she'll know more about the safer stuff than I will at that point, which will help me provide the information to other tenants during the litigation process would be good.
Which she's currently doing it for really broke people. And she says, and since they don't have a computer, it's really hard to get the paperwork, but it's a thing that she wants to do for the goodness of
Right.
her heart.
And
So,
and I'm not sure how much of the safer money is going to be online. I assume they'll get there eventually, but you know, you all might even want to call Horizon yourself just to get to know more from them, what they can tell their tenants to expect, and to kind of, you know, walk your tenants through it. I'm sure they're going to be overwhelmed sooner than later, but I don't know how many people know about their direct, you know, involvement just yet.
okay, thanks.
And a question, do attorneys help navigate the state unemployment commission? That is something I don't know anything about. And I'm sure there's some legal action to help if unemployment gets denied. I know there's some, you know, there is a, you know, administrative law process I'm just more aware of than anything else, but it's something you may want to, you know, ask around Google, stuff like that. I don't know if we know anybody who deals with the unemployment.
I don't know. I don't think Nick does that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know Greg maybe helped out one client I know get through that, but I don't know if he's, you know, in a position to really to do a lot of administrative law stuff. But I'm sure there's some factory out there that's, you know, some attorney that specializes in that. And that's certainly an area of law that you're going to want someone who does it every day. And I'm sure if there is, I guarantee you some attorney has found a way to set up a program, because with as many people who need unemployment right now, some attorneys figured out a way to make money off of this. So I'd look around and see about what you could find, you know, doing that.
And we do hear when we talk to tenants on Zoom dockets and everything, I do often hear their story of, you know, their unemployment's messed up, and as soon as they get that straightened out, they'll be able to pay and that kind of thing. So I know there's challenges going through that system.
And Mary just clarified that, yes, Horizon is only doing city. I guess if I didn't make that clear, yeah, Horizon is just the city program. They are a St. Louis City charity organization. I've done some work for them in the past, and every once in a while they have to put out a tenant. But yeah, they are, they're just city. So county, I don't believe if there's somebody doing something like Horizon in the county, I tried looking around, just a quick Google search, I couldn't find anybody. So the county is still trying to figure itself out, I think.
Hey guys, Chris can stay here and talk to you some more. I have to go to get interesting information doing that. So I'm going to scoot out of here and do that. And Chris can take, you know, more can try. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hey, Kathie.
Well, I see a chat about expanding zip codes. I'm assuming that's for the part of the call after I leave.
Yeah, I think that's probably not for you. That's for the rest of us.
that I don't know much about. Hopefully it's my zip code.
Yeah, always want to be in one.
Yeah. So if anyone have any questions about, you know, evictions, anything like that before I go, I can take a few more. But if everyone's I know we've probably enough of you have asked enough questions, and there's not a whole lot that's changed. It feels like in the last 9 months, but we can, you know, we can do that. I will say, if you've got people you've been holding off on, just figuring what's the point? I'm not going to rock the apple cart while we do it. I think now is the time to start filing. I do know that, you know, as Kathie said, you know, it's maybe not April 5th, but it's not going to go on too much longer. I'm sure you heard from the White House that everyone's supposed to be vaccinated by May or June who wants to be vaccinated. So at some point, the city is going to let us do things. The county is going to let us do things. On a federal level, I know we talked last week and we got all excited about that Texas judge ruling that the CDC moratorium was unconstitutional. Apparently, and this is why I don't do this kind of law, somehow that only applied to that particular tenant. Don't know how that works, but the way it's being interpreted right now is the CDC order is still in effect for for everybody else besides that one tenant in Texas. Who knows how it will go? We may have different information there, but There are smarter attorneys, I'm sure, than I looking into that and how to figure that out. So we still, still getting our hurdles. I think what's going to happen is they're just going to muck everything up until, everybody gets vaccinated and things clear up this summer, and then they'll just go, okay, fine, we don't need the CDC moratorium, and it's a moot point. So bear with us for a while, bear with the courts. If you've got some tenants, hopefully things are, I guess I can say we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And we can hopefully start, making money again. I mean, landlords and attorneys from
Attorneys.
landlords.
Chris,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Mary Finley. I had a question. I talked with an attorney that was handling another one of my evictions, and she told me, and I just don't know, she said that in Biden's bill that they're supposed to sign by the end of next week, supposedly has a clause in there that states that the moratorium he is extending the moratorium to the end of June. Had anyone heard anything like that?
The one thing I know is that there is a foreclosure moratorium until the end of June. That I know is in there. I think he may have already done that.
That's for Fannie Mae.
Yeah.
It's till
And so
into June.
Look, you can count on it. Whatever's going to come out of there is going to have something extending the CDC order in it for the rent cases. Whether or not that gets challenged or not, but I mean, that's a free political football they get to have. No one wants to be the person who lets evictions happen. If they're going to let it happen, it's going to happen because the courts tell them it has to happen. So you can count on whatever is, gets through Congress, if it ever happens in March, is going to have some sort of extension of the CDC order. Again, that only applies to tenants who know how to take advantage of it. And I'm just not seeing a lot of tenants just yet who, pay as much attention to the news as you all do and know that they have to do that. That could pick up once the city and county moratoriums themselves end and they start getting desperate. But as right now, our more pressing issue is getting the getting the city and county to lift theirs. And then the CDC is something we'll deal with on a more limited basis after the fact. But yeah, nothing yet. I read up on it every chance I can get, and they are not talking about that yet now. What inevitably happens, because the CDC order expires currently on March 31st, a week before that, we will start seeing new articles every day about floods of evictions that will lead to the publication of some sort of extension. That's what always happens. And, these floods of evictions that are going to happen. I mean, I've been calling around in preparation for, judgments I took a year ago. Since then, all of my clients to see who's still in there, who's still not. Not to make anybody, Harry, feel bad that one of your tenants is still in there, but a lot of people have moved out. So that's good. About more than half of mine, either they've moved out or they've paid. So we're not quite as bad as I think, but we've got some who are still hanging out in there. And it's just, we're making sure that they get their ducks in a row. And I would suggest if you have judgments, that you start doing the same, because particularly in the city, there's a little more work you have to do to get old judgments approved by the court to execute on. So, if you've got an attorney, talk to them about, make sure they know your tenant's still in there. I mean, I'm telling all my clients who, most of mine I have, I got a pretty good beat on, but there's some that my clients never told me they didn't pay after we got a judgment against them that I may not know that the tenants haven't paid or still in there. So call your attorneys. If you do it yourself in St. Louis City, start looking, because if it's over 120 days in St. Louis City, you've got to get the judge's approval before you can file that execution, unless I'm successful in getting Judge Stelzer to lift that requirement, which would save me a lot of work. So I'm committed to trying to do that. But yeah, it's time to start thinking along those lines for your tenants that have been doing that, so that you get in that first wave and not, while I don't think that it's going to take, I had one client tell me they thought it was going to be months once they started the sheriff, and no, the sheriffs are going to move quick on these. So that don't get too worried about that. They're going to, they come and spit them out, they'll be doing 10, 20 a day, putting people out. The time for the county, Mary, there is no limitation on the county. If you got a judgment from last March, you can file it today and they won't process it, but once they lift it, you can file that issue. The city's the only one to do it. As my understanding, they were concerned because let's just say there are a few landlords that don't use attorneys in the city that, I've represented some of them, that will use old judgments that were paid off and not say that they're paid off and execute them once the tenant gets behind again. And they got caught doing it. So the city got spooked and made that requirement a more blanket thing. So we all kind of have to pay for some other people's bad behavior. But the city's the only one that has that limitation that judgments over 120 days have to at least get judge approval, and they'll want to see your ledger and say, hey, this person, had a $3,000 owed in June, and now they owe me $10,000, and they had never caught up. So that's all you have to show. But in the county, you don't have to do that, and there's no other county that you do. So, anything
Chris,
else before I head out?
Yeah, are you thinking it's gonna be mid-April or probably May
Yeah.
before anything can happen in the city? Just guessing.
Well, I got my hopes up. Last month, and then I think maybe it was the money coming in. The city's always used hey, there's federal money coming is the reason that we don't want to evict people, because why evict people if the landlords can get the money? And that's, I was optimistic that they would lift it, maybe not this time in April, but Kathie's telling me, she's hearing, it's probably not likely. So maybe May, but May, the 1st of May, they would start doing it. I would certainly be optimistic that at the end of May that, by then enough people have gotten vaccinated. Even the city hasn't gotten all the people vaccinated yet, because I just talked to my issuing clerks, and everybody in the issuing department but one person is being quarantined right now because they're positive for COVID. So even the city hasn't even gotten their own employees completely vaccinated yet. So I think once you start seeing that, things will start opening up. Hopefully we can actually start going back to court again, so I can get out of the office every once in a while. But yeah,
I'm hoping
so we're keeping an eye on it. But like I said, for people who, it may be time for people who are just sitting in there not getting out to start, it's all about getting your ducks in a row now, because nothing's quick. So anything you start is going to take a couple months to get through the process. So if you want to be ready to, for people who don't respond to you about getting the new aid, don't respond about helping you apply for ERAP, maybe it's time to start thinking about getting them through the court process, so that by the time you get through it, should match up about the time the courts start doing evictions again on the back end, and you'll be able, you'll be there. Because if you wait until June or May when you hear they're doing evictions, you're not going to get them out until July or August. So that's why you're going to want to start now. And this is I'm sure you all all know that this is the time that most people are going to start wanting to re-rent, and starting to move. And if you're trying to sell properties do you want to get people out of, this is the time, you're going to want to do it now so that you can sell it before the fall. So that would be my advice.
any
anybody
thoughts that
else?
it could go to any thoughts it could go to the end of the year like they're talking in California?
No. Because California, you're not going to have Parsons isn't going to do anything statewide.
Yeah.
I won't ever rule anything out as far as the CDC order if it's allowed to stay up, but I don't think you're going to see the local stuff do that. And please, if that happens, delete this post from whatever Facebook page this is on, so I don't get I don't have to eat those words.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. But at least to everything we're being told is this is a temporary measure. Of course, we were told that back in August, but I don't think anybody, at least in the city, has any expectations that they are trying to get this to last a year. Now, that being said, we could have COVID-2 come around this year, and who knows? But let's hope that doesn't happen.
Okay, Chris, before you go, could you repeat that number again for Horizon Housing? Because a lot of times I get people after this say, hey, what was that phone number
Yeah.
that somebody
Sure.
gave out?
Horizon Housing is 314-865-0383. And it sounds like they're answering the phones right now because Mary called them already. So
Okay,
go ahead and give them a call, and they're hopefully you at least they'll start, you can get out ahead of the game.
okay. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Anybody else got anything for Chris?
All right. Well, I've got a client calling me, I think, in a minute for a phone
Okay.
conference anyway.
Well,
So
let's go. We appreciate your time, always.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Chris.
See you next
Good
week.
luck.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.